Good morning, beautiful people. Hope you're having a great day so far. I just hit some legs, and legs are my weak point. So guess what today's video is about? How to bring up a weak point. And if you are relatively new to the gym, if you're a beginner, you have no idea what your weak points are. Just flat out, you have no idea, because everything will grow. But if you've been in the gym for at least, a year, maybe two, and you'll start to kind of see the things that grow better. Some things for you are just, you're barely even gonna train them and they will grow. And they will just dominate your physique. And then you'll have other parts of your physique that you kind of throw everything at, throw the whole kitchen sink at them, and they just will not grow. And for me, that is my triceps. My triceps are terrible. Now, part of this is genetics, right? I don't have the best insertions, but that's cope. That's the biggest cope ever. You have what you have, right? You can't change your genetics. So instead of bitching, oh, I'm type 1 dominant, oh, I have terrible insertions, okay, and make the best of what you have. So that's what we're gonna do. That's how I'm gonna talk about it. So my triceps, like I said, super weak point. They always have been, and they actually were super imbalanced too. So not only were they small, but my left one was also just way smaller than, this camera is just not wanting to be straight. It's fine. But my triceps, they're already small, and then my left one was way smaller than my right one. So we're talking about like a baby and a fetus, essentially, that I had rocking. And my triceps I've brought them up quite a bit in these past couple years. I've been really focusing them for about a year and a half, I would say. And what have I done? Well, you can do this with any muscle group. It's not just triceps. You want to, the best thing that you can do is put them at the front of your workouts. So regardless of your split, if it's upper lower, if it's full body, if it's push-pull legs, put your priorities at the top. We have diminishing returns, not only on each subsequent set, right? So we know that depending on which meta-analysis you're looking at, the Schoenfeld or the Pelland, we know that the second set is going to be roughly half as stimulating as the first set. And this is where people get into the weeds about it. It doesn't really matter. All that we know is that you have diminishing returns to each set. That is pretty much set in stone, as far as we can set it in stone. Set in clay, because everything can change. So it is well known that we have diminishing returns on each subsequent set. And that's not just the case with each muscle group. That is also the case with each exercise, right? So whatever you hit second in the workout is going to be less stimulating than what you hit first. That first set of the day is the most stimulating. So you really want to get the most out of that set as you can. And that's where you want to that's the meat and potatoes, right? That's where you want to put it. So for me, triceps, every upper day, that's the first thing I'm hitting, is triceps. And you can also, and then just kind of structure your workout around your weak points. So for me, or not even your weak points, it maybe, if you're a beginner, you can just structure it on what you want to be the most prominent, right? Pretty much everyone wants big arms, and pretty much everyone wants a big chest. So if you're running upper lower, you can start your day with chest, and then just move down. So maybe you do biceps next, and then maybe you do triceps, and then you move on. And I've already talked about this, but I do not use fractional sets. I only use direct sets. If you haven't seen my last video, essentially all that means is I count a chest press as one set for chest. I don't count it as half a set for my anterior delt. Well, I do count it as one set for my anterior delts because that's also a prime mover. But I count it everything is either 1 set or 0. It's binary. I don't count anything as half sets. And that's how it's done in the research. So if anyone is ever saying, oh, you need to do 10 to 20 sets a week for hypertrophy, they're more likely talking about fractional sets. So for instance, this one's at the top of mind. In the Helms 2023 study, people like to hate on the volume because they said the participants did less volume than they already were doing. They were doing plenty of volume to grow, but they were doing 9 sets of they were doing 9 sets of biceps directly, but they ended up doing, if you're using fractional sets, they were doing 18 sets. So that's where, when I say that you really need like 4 to maybe 10 sets, 10 or 12, I'd say 4 to 12, and that's a big range, right? But 4 to 12 sets, just push it as high as you can recover from. Direct sets per week, that's what I'm talking about, is direct sets. I'm not talking about doing fractional. Anyways, off topic. We are talking about bringing up weak points. So structure your workout around your weak points. After your first 3 to 4 exercises, it really doesn't matter a whole bunch. So after your first 3 to 4, I would just structure it around how's your gym laid out, So for instance, I hit hip thrusts. At the end of my workout, I hit hip thrusts and then I hit adductors. Why? Because adductor machine is right by the, sorry, I keep fucking with the camera, but it's just, I can't, yeah. The adductor machine is literally right behind the hip thrust machine. Simple as that. And my glutes and my adductors are not really a priority for me either. So there's both at the end of the workout, and then, if you really wanted to get into the nitty gritty, technically, yeah, the whatever is hit first is theoretically going to have more stimulus, but it's, you're splitting hairs. So just kind of after your first 3 to 4, I would just go with however your gym is laid out. So that's the first thing, is structure your workout around your weak points. Put your weak points first. Next, I would say, so this is where things get controversial, right? A lot of people would say to do it unilaterally. I think you can, but I would not, personally. Because unilateral movements, hypothetically, again, theoretically, unilateral sets you're going to have more motor unit recruitment. But what does this also come with? This comes with more fatigue. So I only really use unilateral movements at the end of my workouts, or to bring up things that are imbalanced. So for instance, I talked about my triceps, how they are imbalanced. My left is smaller than my right. What we need to just think about, using a principle and applying it in multiple ways. So if we know that what you hit first gets better stimulus, I hit my left first. And there's 2 ways that you can kind of go about unilateral work. You can either, I guess there's a lot more than 2 ways, but the most common ways is you hit your smaller side first, your weaker side, and then you go right, and then you rest. So you can either rest or not rest, and then go into your weaker side. And you can either match the reps of the strong side, or of the weak side, sorry. So with your strong side, you can either match the reps, or you can match the intensity, so the reps in reserve. And personally, I think this just depends on how big is the imbalance. If it's a pretty big imbalance, then you might just want to match the reps. So because we're not trying to grow we're giving the smaller side, the weaker side, we're giving it a better stimulus, but essentially we're just trying to get the strong side. Oh my God, why am I, English is hard. We're trying to get the strong side to have a worse stimulus than the weak side. And so you can go about it based on anyway. So ideally you should be resting between your left and your right. well, I'm just gonna say left or right. We're gonna assume that left is weaker because that's what it is for me. So my left side, I hit that, and then if I didn't have a very big imbalance, I would rest in between, and then I would hit my right side, and I would just go to the reps in reserve. So let's say I go 1 rep in reserve on my left, then I would rest, and then I would go to 1 rep in reserve on my right. And since it's stronger, it might get more reps. But if the imbalance is bigger, then that's where you can play around with things. You can either take out the rest in between them, you can match the reps, and that's pretty much the 2 things that you can do. So if you have a super strong imbalance, you can just hit the weak side first and then go straight to the strong side and hit that for the same amount of reps. Or if it's medium size, I don't know, if it's kind of in between, then hit the weak side and then go to the strong side and just match the RIR. So maybe your strong side you get 7 reps, and with your weak side you got 5, but they're both to 1 RIR. That's fine. Splitting hairs, as always. Effect sizes are so small that people get everything just fucked up. But what else? So you can do it. So I don't think you can do it. I don't think you should do it unilaterally. Essentially, that's all you should do, is to bring up your imbalances. And since we have this hypothetical increase in motor unit recruitment, I put them at, if I have something at the end of the workout, that's where I would do my unilateral work. Because when you're doing unilateral work, it counts as 1 set for the muscle. So in this case of triceps, where I do left and then right, that would count as 1 set for triceps for the day. However, this is still 2 sets for the total workout. And there's only a certain amount of sets that you can hit per workout effectively. Some people argue about this. There is a limit. We know that there's a limit. Where the limit is arguable. If there wasn't a limit, then people would just be in the gym all day. Like bodybuilders would literally just never leave the gym. And so yeah, I would use them at the end of the workout to hypothetically theoretically bring up your motor unit recruitment, or to fix an imbalance. And that's my thoughts on the matter. Because when we look at the outcome data of unilateral versus bilateral, it's not strong we see no significant difference most of the time. Sometimes bilateral wins, sometimes unilateral wins, and that kind of just goes to show that the effect size is super tiny, so you really don't have to worry about it a lot. So yeah, I would not say to do it unilaterally, again, unless you have an imbalance. So structure your workouts is the first thing. And then the next thing is to bring up the volume. Now, this has a caveat as well. This is nuanced, because you don't want to bring up the volume you don't want to bring it up to a point that you can't recover from, but you can just see if you're progressing. So if you're not progressing on the volume that you have right now, then that's already a problem. You either have a stimulus or a fatigue problem. I went over this in a couple videos ago, but essentially the best way to tell which one you're dealing with is to take an extra rest day. And if you take an extra rest day and that fatigue is gone, so what do I mean by fatigue? We should define it as always. It is a measurable reduction in exercise or in output performance. So I go in Monday, I hit triceps, and I get 80 for 4, 80 for 5. We'll go 80 for 5. And then I go in again on Wednesday, and I hit triceps again, and I get 80 for 4 that time. So I lost a rep. That is fatigue being there. I could not match. I had a decrease in performance, and it's a measurable and reversible decrease in output/performance. There you go. That's fatigue. So if that fatigue is gone, so if you can either match or increase from whatever you had by taking an extra rest day, that's how you know you had a fatigue problem. If it doesn't solve the problem, that's where you probably have a stimulus problem. So in that case, I would increase the weekly volume, and I would just do this by 1 set at a time. So maybe on Monday, so most splits, you're gonna have back-to-back rest days. A lot of people take the weekends off, that's totally fine. But even if you don't, the day right after a rest day, that is where you'll want to increase that set number. Because if you're doing frequency, then if you're doing frequency training, so 2 or 3 times a week, you can't increase by 1 at a time if you add a set to both days. So just add a set to one day. See if that fixes the problem. Again, if it doesn't, you can add another set. So you can increase the volume. The other way that you can increase the volume is by, or you don't really increase the volume, well, you do, but you increase the frequency. So if you're hitting it 2 times a week, maybe you hit it 3 times a week. And if you're running, so if you're running upper lower, again, we're gonna use the triceps as an example. If you're running upper lower and you're doing it 2 times a week, then maybe you throw in, maybe you go 3 times a week for your triceps, you throw in some triceps on a leg day. People will say, oh, but you can't hit the same muscle on back-to-back days. Why not? Central nervous system fatigue? Okay, do it. But yeah, you can increase the frequency. This might require you to change up your split as well. But increase the volume, increase the frequency. The best bang for your buck is literally just putting it first, and look at your total volume as well. So maybe if you're a beginner, you can recover a lot faster, but maybe you're doing too much volume, because we do know that fractional sets, so the Pelland meta did, fractional sets were the best way to, they fit the data the best. So this shows us that yes, if you are hitting a chest press, your triceps are involved and they're getting some stimulus. Now it's messy because the Pelland meta didn't specify between trained and untrained lifters. So this gets, watch my last video if you want to get the full breakdown, but essentially you're going to get more stimulus you're going to get more tricep stimulus as a beginner and less as you get more advanced. So if you're somewhere in between, those fractional sets might be the cause of fatigue. But again, you can just take an extra rest day. And if it solves itself, there you go. Maybe you're doing too much direct work. Maybe your indirect work is leaching over and causing that fatigue. But 9 times out of 10, just put it at the beginning. If that doesn't solve the problem, increase the volume or increase the frequency. And then if you're really strapping, you can start doing it unilaterally. And that's pretty much all I got. So bring up your weak points, go get jacked. I love y'all.